So I feel like it's time for a bit of an update video. I have been putting out various types of content for a while, but I feel like quite a lot of it has been quite directed. I've had very specific ideas in mind for what it is that I want to do or say with those videos, and I have a lot of new ideas popping up, and a lot of my videos have been focusing on that. So I haven't really done anything more chatty and more personal in a little while. So I guess I just wanted to come back to some of the topics, the more personal topics that I do actually like to share about on the channel, and just update you guys and have a chat and just see what it is that kind of mostly comes to mind for me. So as you will probably know, I struggled a lot with the transition into the PhD last semester. I'm not exactly sure what the biggest problem was, if it was just pure exhaustion from coming straight out of a taught master's and into the PhD program, or if it was just the loneliness of the PhD by comparison to the master's. I made the mistake of not auditing any classes, and I would really suggest for anybody going into their first year of a PhD, if you're in the UK system and you don't actually have to take any classes, that you do actually audit classes, because we're so used to, I mean, unless you're a total introvert and working away by yourself on your research project sounds like absolutely wonderful, then you might be fine. But I was really taken aback by the extent to which I felt the difference between the master's structure in terms of social life and the PhD one, because I mean, obviously I knew I wasn't going to be going to classes and having that chance to talk about the scholarship and that kind of thing with my peers so much, but I had this false idea that the same kind of structure, social structure of us all going for lunch together every day and so on, that would somewhat continue. But I think there was just something about the intensity of the masters that made everybody come together in a very social kind of way. Whereas I found this year, maybe just because the PhD cohort is more dispersed, that I just don't really have that base to kind of touch, if that makes sense. And so my year this year has been much less social. But part of this I think also has just been because I'm no longer prioritizing social life, because the masters was so incredibly intense. And because I didn't really know anybody when I first arrived here, and I was really wanting to build a life for myself here and get to know people and so on, and because I was single, it was really important to me to take the time that I could to really kind of unwind with other people and talk to people and get to know them and so on. And I really let the YouTube channel and blogging and all of my creative projects slide completely. Like all of my work here as Anya Orga, all of the content creation that I like to do, it pretty much went by the wayside. I don't need to tell you guys that, you know that, like only a handful of videos, I only got a handful of videos done over the course of that year. And that was kind of okay as a 1 year thing. I got very little creative writing done as well. I had various projects in mind that I wanted to do for what was then Heart Story or Anya Orga. I had various novels that I wanted to start or get back to, and basically none of that happened apart from a very small amount of creative writing. And the problem is that now that I'm going into the PhD, it's not a temporary situation anymore, and that life where all I had was sort of the mania of the master's degree and going to class and doing the work and everything, and also that being counterbalanced with just like constant socializing, that just wasn't going to work anymore, because I knew I needed to start finding space in my life, solitary time, to work on those creative projects, to start making videos here on Anya Orga again, to blog again, and to do all of those things, because I was becoming more and more detached from myself. I was kind of building up this new version of myself that was ultimately sort of hollow. Because even though all the scholarship interested me and I loved getting to know all of those people, it's just not where my priority ultimately lies, you know? Like if I had to sit down and write down a list of all the things that I think are most important in the world and for me to contribute to the world and what I can best help to contribute, academia and religious studies scholarship would be fairly far down the list. I mean, you know, it'd be in the top 10 or top 5, but definitely not in the top 3 or 4. So it was just increasingly untenable for me to maintain that lifestyle. And that kind of also was what led to me suddenly socializing an awful lot less. And I guess this is the problem for me now, is that all of what I'm doing now is very solitary, because working on Anya Orga stuff, that's solitary work to a large extent. I really love interacting with you guys, and this is why I've really been pushing myself specifically on YouTube to be creating more content, because it gives more of an opportunity for interaction with people, and you know, being on social media and that stuff. At least it reminds me that there are people out there listening to what I have to say, and that's a gift. I really appreciate that. And actually I've got that much less in the PhD. We have a small group of religious studies PhD students, and we do go to kind of weekly research seminars, and every now and then I'll be giving research papers and going to conferences. And obviously I have meetings with my supervisors, but you know, to a large extent, all of the work, all of the majority of the time that I spend on both of those things actually is solitary. It requires me sitting in a room by myself, either, you know, at the computer or in front of the camera, and just putting my thoughts into words. And I love doing that kind of work, but I'm increasingly unsure as to whether I can actually spend all of my time doing that kind of work. And this is frustrating to me, because the reason I came to academia was because I decided that there were so many things that were important to me that I didn't want to spend, you know, even 20 hours a week working a job that wasn't important to me, that I didn't feel like was contributing to an area that really matters to me on a fundamental level. And I felt like being in academia would help that, and it definitely does, and it definitely will. If I do go ahead and have a career in academia, it will feel more fulfilling to me, because I feel like I'm engaging with conversations that are important to me, that I think are important to have, and that I think have the potential to in some way change society. And that's important. But I don't think I realised until this year or last year just how extroverted I actually am. I always thought of myself as being an introvert, but the first couple of months of the PhD have taught me nothing more than that I am at heart an extroverted person, but I have a tendency to fall into introverted habits, and if I'm allowed to do that, I start to become quite unhappy. So I don't really have any answers to this right now. I don't really know what this means for me going forward. I don't know if this means that I'm going to change my mind about going into academia, or I don't know. But yeah. That's what's been happening for me with regard to how I feel about the PhD, how I feel about academia. It's been a bit of a struggle. All of my old problems with anxiety and insomnia and stuff like that just all reared their head again, which, you know, is kind of inevitable. Like any of those things that we tend to struggle with emotionally or mentally will always rear their heads when we don't have a kind of daily schedule or a daily routine that really suits us, that makes us happy, you know. I'm doing much better this semester. I think that's partly because I've gotten a little bit more proactive about organising myself and making sure that I am getting videos done, that I am making time for other creative projects related to Anya Orga, like writing, gradually starting to work on a new book concept, which I think is kind of going to bridge the divide between the Anya Orga content and fiction. So that's kind of exciting, but I'm still frustrated by how little time I actually have for those projects, because at the end of the day, it's not just a balance thing. It's not just finding the balance between doing enough work on my PhD to feel like I'm making enough progress with that, and then, you know, finding time to do the other stuff. I think it does really come down to, at the end of the day, I mean, you'll have noticed that I'm doing more videos, but I'm not blogging right now, and I'm finding it much easier to do the videos than to make time for extra writing. And I think that's because making videos is a little bit more of a social experience because I'm speaking out loud and it's a bit different, so it's a little bit more active and it feels more interactive than writing does, because when you're writing a book or writing something like a long-term project, it's very long term, it's down the line. Like having a readership or response to that work is very far off in the distant future. So that's why I've been feeling more of a pull to make more immediate content that I get immediate feedback on, so that I can actually get a conversation going with people, because that's what I'm really craving right now. So all of this is starting to make me wonder if I should maybe be reconsidering what I'm focusing on while I'm doing this PhD. I made the decision to not start offering any kind of spiritual mentoring again this year because I wanted to make time instead for writing. And I am now just wondering if maybe during my PhD isn't the best time to be doing extra writing because, like I say, it's such a solitary activity and it's so similar to everything else that I'm doing. And I'm starting to wonder if I might be better off to actually start doing something more interactive, like offering spiritual mentoring and putting time into that, into developing that and playing around with that and seeing how I might want to do that and how that might work. Just because it might help me feel a bit more engaged with you guys and with just other spiritually minded people, and it might make me feel like I'm being a bit more proactive and making kind of an immediate difference or something. Making a difference is something that's become important for me very recently. I think it's safe to say that the sort of political upheaval we've been experiencing in the UK and the US for quite a while now, just between Brexit and Trump, I think that has really pushed me even more into kind of seeking political activism. And for the moment, I'm really just trying to educate myself. I'm doing a lot of reading. I want to do a lot of non-fiction reading. I want to learn more about the environmental crisis, about politics and what my politics are, and kind of solidify a lot of that. So it's kind of, I think that might be partly because I'm feeling like I'm not actually making a difference in anyone's lives right now. And when I was working before and working on Heart Story, working in an archive and working on Heart Story, at least in the archive, even though the work wasn't meaningful enough for me because I wasn't as engaged with that community as I had been in the past, I was still interacting with people, I was helping people. It was, I about 1 week out of maybe 8, I would be working in the library section. I would be helping customers. I would frequently be answering the phones and not customers, users. I would frequently be answering the phones and responding to queries. And it was nice to work with other people, to be working towards specific goals with other people, to specific visions, and to be feeling like I was helping people. And then at the same time, I was offering tarot readings and spiritual mentoring. So my life was actually a lot more socially focused, and also just felt a lot more proactive, and it felt a lot more positive. I felt like I actually was making positive change in the lives of other people, and even though that wasn't like political change, and I'm still figuring out how best I want to go forward, like what ways are best for me to try to affect the political change that I think is most important. I think that helping people in other ways too would be just as valid and just as positive, and would just lift me out of the kind of slump that I have been experiencing, and which, like I say, I'm kind of coming out of, but I think that's because I have been getting more proactive about thinking about ways that I can help to affect positive change. Maybe I don't actually have to have all these creative writing projects finished by the time I'm 30. Honestly, I think that's kind of where my head is at. I feel like I need to have not only but books finished by the time I'm 30, and the idea of not having a finished manuscript to my name before I turn 30 is terrifying to me. And if I put everything like that to one side while I'm doing the PhD, then that is exactly what's going to happen, because I'm going to be probably about 31 by the time I actually get my PhD. And you know what? Maybe that's okay. And maybe I need to be more concerned about knowing that I'm doing something in the here and now and every day, every week, that is actually creating positive change, that is impacting the world in a positive way. And, you know, yes, making YouTube videos is a really nice, enjoyable, positive thing that I've really been getting back into, but maybe it's time to think about other things that I can do as well. So yeah, I don't know, feel free to share thoughts. I wasn't expecting this video to go in this direction at all. I may or may not even post this, to be honest. If you see this online, then yeah, know that it maybe nearly didn't make it.